Good afternoon, guys. It's Mrs. Allocca. Welcome back to a new week. We're so close to the end of the school year. I think for the rest of the year, my objective is to really tackle your writing. I am pretty confident for the most part that you guys are reading and you are amazing readers. And I do want to put that on you, how important reading is. Really, there are so many scientific studies out there that tell us as educators and parents that kids who read and read a lot and read frequently and read a variety of materials do better in school, do better in life because reading is the basis of all other instruction and things that you are going to learn. So I really, really do want to now zone in on your writing, and I really want to hyper focus in on these COVID journals. I think we have the seeds of something phenomenal, and my lessons now are going to really take that forward because I want you to walk away with a product with which you are proud that you would show to anybody, whether it's to your grandparents, your aunts, your uncles, or down to later on when you have kids and your grandchildren, because this really is a primary source. So today's topic is the writing process. And I want to still in you the importance of the writing process. Writing is not one and done. Writing is not like, let me answer this question and let me get it out of here, and you don't ever look back at what you wrote. Um, Writing is a bit more laborious, but at the same time, it is something that you can love. And what I want to show you is kind of like the science behind writing, and it starts with what's on my screen right now. So there were researchers out there somewhere in education that like tried to figure out what do real writers really do, and studied a bunch of writers and how they went about writing. And what they discovered is that every single writer uses the same exact process. It might look a little bit different, it might feel a little bit different, but the same basic steps were used by every single writer that they had studied. And it's right here in front of you. So this, a lot of time is spent, and I'm going to call this here planning. And I'm going to write down the word planning. Um, Planning is probably, I would argue, the most important part of the writing process. And how this wheel looks at it as that, and actually just take a look at this in this wheel. All of these steps from this cloud forward are all part of planning. Good writers, they collect ideas, they look around their world, they ask questions, they think and they process. And then they start to get these ideas of like what it is that they have to say about that, about whatever topics they're looking at. And they practice out loud and they practice in their head and they practice on a screen and they start to really take shape. All writers plan, and planning is arguably the most important part of the writing process. And then if you take a look at the rest of the writing process, writers draft. Drafting is literally just throwing out your ideas on paper, whether you're writing them out by hand or you're typing them. It's literally getting your ideas out on paper in some form or shape that you have decided upon. And then we have revision. I would say in my brain, revision is like I used to say it's the most important part of the process, but I can't have two most important parts of the processes. So I would say that this is the second, that was supposed to be a two. The second most important part of the writing process is revision. This is where you actually look at what you wrote, you read it, you figure out, is this exactly the way I want to say it? And then you move forward. And then we have editing. Editing is like the fine tuning of your writing. Editing is, I would say, because this is the third most important part of the process. Um, Editing is where you're looking for grammar, punctuation, spelling. Does this comma go here? Does this period go here? Oh my God, wait a second. Look, I've got like a line, a sentence that's 7 lines long, and I know that's too long and something is wrong with that. Editing is where you're doing the capitals, you're underlining. That's all part of the writing process. And then publishing. Publishing is where you share. Whether you're sharing little, like you wrote a letter to grandma to thank her for the great birthday gift that she gave you, or you're writing something big. You're writing something to the President of the United States and how you feel about his COVID response. Um, Sharing could be a big group where you have a group of 250 people looking at what you're doing, or it could be really tiny. You're sharing something with your mom. So anything that you share and you share in writing is publishing. So I'm going to try and take you through some of the steps and show you what they look like, kind of in a real world scenario. I really want to hyper focus in on planning. So, first of all, I wanted you guys to realize that all writers plan. Every single writer out there has a plan. I met a local author a couple years ago in Colchester, and she was at our jobs fair that unfortunately you guys don't get to see this year. But she had laid out on different those foam boards. She had laid out all of her plans for her book that she was selling, and she had color-coded sticky notes for characters. And then with those color-coded sticky notes in each chapter, laid out what that character was doing in that chapter. Like she laid out a plan for her story that you could easily follow, and then it translated into a book. Here's something from an author, Jack Gantos. I love him. He's the writer of, oh shoot, I should capitalize this for you guys. Notice I am editing right now. Jack Gantos wrote Joey Piggs a Swallow the Key, Joey Piggs Loses Control. He wrote the Dead End at Norvelt. I think that's the title of the book. But anyway, Jack Gantos has some great videos on writing, and he talks in his videos about these maps that he creates. He calls them neighborhood maps. And basically, he has taken ideas for all of his stories from the people and the places that he's lived in his life. And he moved around a lot. I think he said he moved around 7 times in his childhood. And all of these people, this is his sister Betsy, these are people from the neighborhood. All of these people have landed in his stories. And he tells us in those videos how it is that he got those stories and what these people did. And each person became a character somewhere in a book, which I think is so cool. You know, one of my favorites, J.K. Rowling. And I just looked up like what she did to create Harry Potter. You know, she has made billions of dollars on Harry Potter. Yes, I wish I was her and I wish I had her brain. But I went and looked up her planning and if anything was online, and she had so many different ways of planning. One way, I know this looks like paragraphs to you. This is just a story synopsis of what happens in one of her books. Notice there's no, if you read this, you could take time later to read this. There's no character dialogue or anything like that or beautiful descriptions. It's just basically she laid out what was going to happen in the book. She also had these really cool things. She did like family trees of her characters. Like this is the house of Sirius Black. These are his relatives. And if you know anything about the book, you know that half of his relatives were like Death Eaters and they worked for the bad guys. And then she had a family tree here for the Ronald Weasley's family, who was born when and who had who and that sort of thing. And I also and there she had tons of stuff. She had like sketches for what she wanted like the shields to look like, and she asked herself questions to think more deeply about. I want to say one of them was the House of Ravenclaw, but we go down here, she's got a sketch of what happens in one of the books. Like this is an overview. And then she's got she had a lot of these. These are like frameworks for what she wanted to get done in writing um, in her books. And it's like an overlay of the stories in the different chapters, which as I was diving deeper and deeper, I realized like how much planning doing something like that, so involved like Harry Potter, is that of course she would have like all of these materials to look at to keep herself guided. But going back to here, look at all the time, and that's just a small snippet of what she's done. Look at all the time that she spent in this planning area. So that's what I need you to do for your journals. So I took the planner that I put in this lesson for you, and this goes back to last week's video where I talked about how I get ideas and how I look for ideas. And I took one of those ideas, which was the masks. Me having mask envy. And so, what I started to do was in this journal, the first thing you need to do, and I noticed Anne Frank did it in her diary that I gave you guys a copy of, you want to talk about the thing. What's the thing that happened that sparked your idea? So for me, it was going into, if you take a look, it's going into big Y. And this is where I told you guys about the girl, my checkout girl. Okay. And I talked about that I had complimented her mask. Like, how weird was that? So, this is literally the details, the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how of what happened. Like, what was that thing? Is your thing a bike ride? Is your thing that you're planting a garden? Is your thing that you are building something with dad? Or did you guys go to the Salmon River? What is that thing that you were doing that sparked the idea? And then I needed to plan for myself, what was that thinking that was going on in my head. I was thinking like, gosh, how beautiful her mask is. Like, that's quite stellar and stunning. And I want a mask like that too. And then the thought ran through my head, who does that? How weird am I that I complimented somebody on their mask? That's just strange. And then I kind of looked around, and this is literally what happened in my head. I'm like walking out of Big Y, and I'm looking at other people's. What are they doing for coverings? And I see the people with scarves, and I see people with like those. They almost look like bandanas, but they come all the way down the neck. And I saw people with gloves, and you can't see anybody's faces. And then I noticed that you can't see. I can see people's eyes, but you can't see smiles or facial expressions. We're kind of being taken away from being able to like communicate with people because our faces say a lot. And then I have every journal tends to have a reflection piece. So that's what I want you to do. Ooh, let me edit my planner. You don't have to edit your planners, but that just annoys me. Um, so then I look at this, my reflection on that moment, which is what I showed you in those videos. Like, why is this moment going through my head? And I'm wondering, like, is this real? Is this the new normal? Is this like how we're going to be living, and for how long? Like, and should I really invest in a number of masks? And I didn't put that in there. This is the fashion queen part of me. So now I've thought about my ideas going back to here, planning. You can't write if you don't know what it is you are going to say. So now I have my thought and I have my planner and I know what it is that I want to do. So I started this before I started the video for you, but I kind of get down to the nitty gritty, and I kind of want to show you, like, the writing process looks like a circle here, but really, I want to tell you that really good writers, when you get good at it, writers kind of do this. They bounce from planning. They'll go back to planning again. Drafting. Then they'll go back to planning. Then they'll revise. Then they'll go back to planning. Then Then they'll go to editing. Then they'll be like, oh, wait a minute, forgot something. Then they'll go back to revision. Then they'll go back to planning again. And it literally, writers go back and forth. And what nobody told me in school was that this happens. Excuse me, I'm turning that off. So here is really what happens in the writing process. And you might notice that as I'm writing. So I'm going to do a little bit of writing for you. And I'm going to do some thinking out loud. And you can see what it is that I am doing. So I have my start. I was at Big Y downtown today, and the weirdest thing happened. I complimented a woman on her mask. What has this world come to? Is it just me, or is that weird? I was at the checkout. Can you guys see that? Why won't it let me type? What's that? There we go. Now it's on. I was at the checkout counter, rifling through my bag when I noticed a cashier's face mask. It was a beautiful, and notice I'm not worrying about the editing it. It was a beautiful pale green floral paisley pattern. Um, it had yellows, blues, pinks, and teals mixed into pattern. It was stunning. I actually got jealous. My mask was a simple blue and white stripe. I wondered where she had gotten hers. I had seen a bunch online from different companies. So now what I tend to do as a writer is then I go back and I take a look at what I have and notice all my mistakes. And so I'm going to do a little bit of, I tend to go back and revise and edit and then go on to the next section. So I was at the checkout counter rifling. I knew I spelled that wrong. Through my bag when I noticed the cashier's face mask. I honestly am wondering if face mask is one or two words. So I'm going to look it up. Face mask. Two words. Okay, so I'm going to go back. Face mask. It was a beautiful pale green floral paisley pattern. It had yellows, blues, pinks, and teals mixed into, and I already used pattern, so maybe I want to change that word, design. Oh, I could spell it right though. It was bitter. Like a gator gun. Bitter. It was stunning. I actually got jealous. My mask was a simple blue and white. Oh, forgot a letter there. Blue and white stripe. I wondered where she had gotten hers. I had seen a bunch online. I keep spelling this wrong. I didn't realize it was one word. From different companies. I said, I love your mask. I imagine that she smiled because I couldn't see her smile. She said, thanks. I paid for my parm cheese and crusty Italian bread and left. As I was leaving, I started to laugh. Like, laugh. I don't know why. Like, I started to. Oh, I forgot the two. Um, like, who does that? Um, So now what you can see, and I go back and I'm revising and editing, what I tend to do is I tend to go back and reread as part of my revision and editing. I kind of do those simultaneously. So I'm going to reread it out loud again. I was at the checkout counter rifling through my bag when I noticed the cashier's face mask. It was a beautiful pale green paisley pattern. It had yellows, blues, pinks, and teals mixed into the design. It was stunning. I actually got jealous. My mask was a simple blue and white stripe. I wondered where she'd gotten hers. I had seen a bunch online from different companies. I said, I love your mask. I imagined that she smiled because I couldn't see her smile, and she said, thanks. I paid for my parm cheese and crusty Italian bread and left. I actually don't need that comma there. As I was leaving, I started to laugh at myself, like, who does that? Then I looked around. I looked around. I noticed all the different masks people were wearing. One woman had a winter scarf. One man looked like he was wearing something from a construction site that had, what do you call that thing? Ventilator? That had, anyone's mouths. You guys need to be able to see that. I could not see anyone's mouths. Could not tell they were smiling, grimacing, or scowling. With masks, our emotions are hidden from view. I just changed my view on things, guys. That is scary. Oh, ha, that is Carrie. Um, so then I'm going to go back through now. I'm looking at this paragraph and I'm like, okay. So I read up to here. As I was leaving, I started to laugh at myself. So I gave you guys that paragraphing lesson. I feel like this is a transition right here. I'm going to throw this baby into a new paragraph. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to check my planner, which is around here somewhere, right? Right here. And see if I got things in it. I got the checkout girl. I got the bread and the cheese. I got the girl and complimented her on the mask. Um, I got the idea that her mask was attractive, and I got this idea down, and I got this idea down. So now I'm into that reflection piece. So my piece is not quite done yet, but you do know that I have actually the picture because it was on that video of me in my blue and white striped mask. So I'm going to continue this writing. But what I'm hoping that you saw as I was doing this is that I literally was bouncing back and forth between my plan drafting, revising, editing, going back to drafting, revising and editing again, going back to planning and thinking about what it is that I was trying to say. Really, guys, the most important thing that you need to know is that if what you're writing doesn't make sense for your audience, you have to think about your audience. If your writing doesn't make sense, if it is not clear, if it is not well thought out, and if it is boring and there's no details and it's just listy and you're not giving everything you can, and that will be another lesson coming up this week, then there's no point in writing it. We want to hear, your readers want to hear what's going on, what you are thinking, and what your reflection is in this journal. And what I want you to get out of this is that all writers follow a process. It starts with planning, right here, planning. It goes into drafting. So step 1, step 2 is drafting. Step 3 is revising. Editing is step 4, and step 5 is publishing. There are steps to the writing process. You can go back and forth between them, but every writer uses them. Writing is not one and done. Writing, like baking a bread or baking a cake, it's a craft, and you need all your ingredients and you need to pull it together. So I hope that this helps you. After watching this, please answer the questions on the Google survey so that I know that you made it all the way to the end. Thank you.